How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Deciduous Bonsai podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Robson, a deciduous bonsai professional here in Portland, Oregon. And I have with me a friend and very special guest today, Austin Heitzman, who's a local stand maker here.
Hello.
Austin, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Of course. Now, we've worked together, going back probably 6 or 7 years, kind of right
quite
when
a while. I mean,
yeah. And you made this stand that we have behind me here. It's a really interesting stand, a mahogany stand that you made for a different tree of mine, but it's been fun to use it for several things here in the garden. What do we have here?
yeah, it's it's a very typical, almost traditional Japanese stand. One small modification from the Japanese model, where usually in Japan, this little transition down to the smaller member is kind of done through miters. In this piece, I kind of reduced the size of the actual wooden element to a slight different spin on a very traditional design, but a very versatile deciduous stand. These little wooden pegs holding up the bottom frame kind of echo the branching in the trees.
I always call those dowels, is that correct?
Dowel would be the correct woodworking term, yes. Yeah. So they're very traditional. A lot of deciduous stands would even have a denser amount of these. You would have them, very dense, again, echoing the branching in the tree. This one we pulled back a little bit on, but it gives a nice kind of air element, and it would allow it to also work with some conifers as well, if you were to choose to use that. And then mahogany for the wood. I believe this has been fumed, although
I think you did fume
it's been an age since I did it, so I'm not 100%, but it sure does look like it has been. The fuming is just a way to accelerate the aging process. Mahogany will naturally darken. And generally you want your bonsai stands to be darker since they're kind of the grounding force of the display.
Yeah.
So fuming is simply exposing the wood to ammonia fumes, high percentage ammonia fumes.
Okay. And that takes it from like a lighter red to a darker red?
Yeah, it'll get like a deep red. If you do it to oak, it'll go from the white light tan to a walnut brown.
Oh, interesting.
So it works with a wide range of woods. It's essentially a chemical reaction with the tannins in the wood.
So I have a question for maybe a controversial question.
Yeah.
How do you feel? So that's using a technique to make the wood change color. How do you feel about doing that versus like staining a stand with like a?
I don't know if it's
stain.
controversial, but in my opinion, personally,
maybe controversial. Who knows?
To me, it comes down to just natural tone. I guess I feel like with the chemical dyes and stains, also the oxidation technique, which is iron in a vinegar solution, that again reacts with the tannins. But since the chemical is reacting with, chemical qualities in the wood that are inconsistent over the course of the wood, you kind of get a more natural inconsistency in the tone. Whereas with a pigmented dye, it tends to feel painted on. It feels kind of plastic. It's very mono, one level. You get one kind of color throughout.
It kind of takes away the individuality of the wood a little bit.
Yeah, you lose that kind of transition, and kind of when you naturally look at a board, it has darker areas, it has lighter areas.
Okay.
And so the chemical dyes just kind of allow you to preserve that kind of natural feel, but then get the unnatural color that you're striving for. So you can kind of get those darker tones, but they feel more natural, essentially. And I think in bonsai, that's a big goal, is to achieve something that appears natural, even though it may not quite be natural.
Oftentimes isn't.
Yes, it's this kind of faux natural. But it has to be done in such a way that nobody knows that this little sleight of hand has even occurred. So that's why I tend to lean towards the chemicals over the pigmented dyes. Plenty of people do the pigmented dyes, but if you were to look at a piece, you would, I think, instantly feel like that has been colored. That has been affected by the human hand.
Nice.
Of course, this might fool you.
So how'd you get started making bonsai stands? Give us just like a really quick history on how you got here. Why are you making these awesome stands? And what do you enjoy about it?
I got into bonsai stands through bonsai, essentially. I was doing bonsai as a hobby, and then learning the horticulture and the biology of the trees kind of got me very interested into what might be going on inside these trunks.
And you were a woodworker before?
I wouldn't say woodworker per se. More of a hobbyist enthusiast. I started the bonsai as a hobby, and then the woodworking kind of fell in behind that. So bonsai kind of really woke me up to the fact, like I realized that obviously as there's different trees out there, you see different leaves, there's different things going on, but I was really never clued in to the species specific. I couldn't walk through the woods and be like, that's an alder, that's a maple, that's an oak, that's a white oak, that's a red oak. I didn't know these things. And then learning that, all these different species existed with different leaf characteristics, growth characteristics. The question is, well, what does that do on the inside? And as soon as I found out that all that variety on the outside is equally,
That's really cool. I didn't know bonsai kind of got you like in the
it totally
stands.
sparked that kind of exploration. And so I started collecting burls in kind of defunct Philadelphia. I was living in Philly at the time. Okay. There's a lot of parks there that are just kind of left fallow. Yeah. And there was a really nice one close to me, nice in the sense that nobody cared about it. So I could go there and kind of collect burls off of fallen trees. And I worked at the art museum, and I'd take them in after hours and slice them up just kind of to see what was going on. Yeah. And started to amass this kind of collection of wood. And then kind of the working with it just kind of flowed out of that, and just starting to learn. I just YouTubed, a bunch of woodworking and started to make pieces of furniture. I got this idea that I would remake every piece of furniture in my house, and I would be able to live with all these pieces I've created rather than purchasing these secondhand or whatever things. Yeah. And that kind of flowed into, well, maybe I want to try and pursue this, as a career.
And so what percentage of your business, you make furniture, you make bonsai stands, what percentage of your business do you think is skewed toward the other?
There's a push and pull there. Okay. So sometimes it's all one, none of the other. A lot of times I would say 50-50 is kind of, if we were to average out the general kind of...
Which is actually a lot of bonsai stands.
It is a lot of
That's bonsai. Like a very limited clientele versus anyone needs a piece of furniture.
And then a lot of the bonsai clientele ends up buying furniture as well. Okay. So a lot of what I'm doing too is making furniture for bonsai enthusiasts. And then non-bonsai enthusiasts will contact me wanting furniture styled as bonsai stands. I've done a few full-scale furniture pieces that were inspired by stands that I've made.
Have you done vice versa too? Have you made stands based on like traditional furniture design?
I think every stand is kind of almost based off of traditional furniture design in one way or another. A lot of, originally bonsai stands in Japan were made, were just low tables. And we've got extra guests here today with us.
This is Bailey's first introduction to you.
They were low tables that were, repurposed as display. And then I, working at the museum, I was exposed to a lot of, they have a really wide furniture collection. So I was exposed to this broad kind of history of furniture there. Nice. Got into the American colonial stuff. But they also had a lot of Nakashima. And then I started to see this kind of repurposing of themes. Like a lot of the colonial American stuff is really inspired by traditional Japanese and Chinese forms. And so there's been this kind of cultural appropriation that's existed, at least in the American furniture. And be able to kind of use that to then craft bonsai stands that kind of have 1 foot in that American, traditional world, and then also 1 foot in the Japanese bonsai world. Has been an interesting thing to explore.
Archie, that's awesome. So with furniture design, we have this take in traditional bonsai where the stand is supposed to be kind of subsidiary to the tree. You don't want to like look at a display like this and the first thing you see the pot or the stand or the accent or the scroll. Like you have like a hierarchy of like tree and then kind of pot, stand, other elements are always kind of like not submissive, but secondary in a way. Not that they can't be beautiful in their own right, but how do you toy with that? Because you make some very traditional stands like the one we have here. You make some very avant-garde stands with a lot of personality. How do you kind of toy with that in a stand maker? Because you're a very, very good artist, and it must be challenging to like express yourself in subtle ways.
I think the biggest overall thing is you have to pick the right stand for the right composition. There's no sense in making an avant-garde piece for a very traditional tree, and that would never work. And I feel like in the traditional Japanese kind of use of stands, I would put them more in a sense of they are kind of thought of as a frame. Like if you were to go to an art gallery and look at a Van Gogh, the frame surrounding that Van Gogh is kind of where the Japanese view the stand.
Exactly.
It's supposed to, present the work of art, but then, yes, being subsidiary, but then it's also, there is a color that is picked to pair, it is meant to go with, same with the pots, it's supposed to accentuate the tree, but then step back. I think, when I'm kind of stepping away from that model, it's more of how can the stand be part of the tree's story? Like, how can it be a more integral part of the display?
One way I saw you do that was really cool is actually by material choice. So I think it was Howard, our friend Howard had a Japanese maple that he had on display, and then you used a Japanese maple, like an ebonized Japanese maple stand that you made for him on it.
I mean, Japanese maple's a beautiful wood and a pleasure to work with. Yeah, it's really nice. It's really hard, and people are like, oh, hardwoods are so horrible to deal with.
It's got to be just hard to find it, right?
Well, it's very hard to find it. I mean, it's not something you find. I mean, that's kind of the thing. I mill a lot of my own lumber. Mostly just to kind of, if you think of wood as my paint, set, it's nice to have more colors to play with. I mean, we can chemically alter them, but at one point, it's nice to have a wider breadth of materials to pull from. And Japanese maple is such an iconic, bonsai tree. To be able to craft, furniture for bonsai, from such an iconic tree is really an awesome opportunity.
I remember when you told me you had a few boards of it. I was about to pull the trigger, and then Howard swiped them up.
And
I'm so glad he
watching.
did.
They're gone right now. But if you have a Japanese maple in your yard you don't like, let me know.
That's got to be a part of the pleasure of living in the Pacific Northwest is like trees grow so big and fast here that like you can probably get millable Japanese maple here if you're going to get it somewhere versus the Midwest where they grow.
Here is like, a tree person's paradise. Everything here is bigger than people would ever imagine. So, I've gotten a couple Japanese maple logs that were really beautiful and good size. For Japanese maple for sure. Rhododendron is another one that has a real provenance in terms of the bonsai world and the Japanese culture. And it comes out a little light for your typical bonsai use, but when you oxidize it, it has just this really intense kind of deep metallic gray almost color, like a gunmetal color to it. With a nice dense grain structure. It's a beautiful wood.
So have you made a rhododendron stand for like a Satsuki azalea yet?
A rhododendron stand yet. I have made rhododendron jitas. That's kind of as big as I've pulled off. One of my neighbors has this rhododendron in their yard that I see every morning on my walk. And I'm not even exaggerating that the trunk is like this big around.
14, 16 inches.
And 5-6 feet tall, vertical trunk. It's the most perfect lumber specimen on the planet. And it's part of my daily routine to check in on it, make sure that it's healthy, and if it's not healthy, to discuss with the homeowner the potential.
Is that part of your practice, like in sourcing material? Do you actually have you actually sourced like live trees or like trees that are on the brink of death or on the side of the road?
I do it all the time. It's probably not the most cost-effective practice that I have. But part of this is more of a fascination just with the lumber and material and exploring things that don't get used as lumber and material. So I've talked with many homeowners about, many different yard trees, dogwoods, redbuds, rhododendron, Japanese maple. So a lot of times, one of those Japanese maple logs I got, I was in an apartment next to this dental office that had these beautiful Japanese maples around the whole perimeter of the office. And I woke up one morning and heard, the chainsaw sounds, and I looked down the street, and half of them are gone. And so, I got
they're
up.
probably like chucking them in the shredder.
They're chopping them into firewood rounds and getting rid of them. And I ran over there and I was just like, hey guys, and there is not every log is a lumber log. There's certain dynamics about a log that influence how the wood dries and functions. If a log's leaning too much, their internal tensions can be in there and it's not necessarily the best lumber quality wood. Same with twisting and branching forms. Those are all kind of red flags. But, I was looking down the line at the other maples and I was like, well, those two look really good. I was like, hey, you don't know me, you have no reason to trust me, but if you wouldn't mind just dropping that as a log, I will make sure that it's gone tonight. And nobody's going to call you saying you didn't do your job. But they were nice enough to go along with that. Some weirdo comes running up like, hey, I want your tree. But they cut it down, dropped it, and loaded it in the truck, and took it to the mill. So similar with Eric Schrader just recently, he informed me that he had some large Manzanita.
Yeah, you were just showing me a beautiful piece of Manzanita over there.
How much should I run over and grab it, or is that a faux pas
we'll put it on a B-roll.
All right, B-roll. But yeah, I mean, I've been kind of actively searching for Manzanita for a long time now.
Now, I got a Jita from you years ago that was a Manzanita Jita, and you told me when I got it from you, like, I might not work with this again. It's a pain in the butt. Like it's super tough, like especially to cut. Well, the main
problem with the Jita Manzanita, those are taken from root burls. The Manzanita will burl underground in the rootstock. Similar to like a big leaf when they get those kind of basal burl structures. And the Manzanita tend to grow in very sandy soil. And any root growing in sandy soil envelops that sand and grit. It's just impregnated.
And it probably just like destroys your saw blade.
And so bandsaw blades aren't carbide tip; they're just steel. And sand and steel blade just devastates it. It dulls it immediately, and once that blade's dull, you can't cut a reliable line with it. It veers off track. And so you're almost having to change the blade every cut in order to actually mill the thing. I've since discovered ways to work with Manzanita burl in a more
efficient
manner. I mean, you got to take it to the car wash, and you got to get a pressure hose on it, and you got to spray it just to the end of time. And even then, sometimes you hit a sand pocket, and there's just not much you can do about that. But it does help and makes it better. Because it is such a beautiful wood.
It's gorgeous, like the red and kind of orange tones in it.
I mean, it's just really like the rawest woods here. Wow, I hope that shows up.
Our audience loves the dogs.
I wonder if they tune in for us or this. I would say that probably if it was me.
Chasing his tail's pretty funny.
But so the Manzanita trunk doesn't quite have the issues that the root stock does have. In fact, actually, I was expecting a nightmare on the Manzanita just because the logs are extremely heavy. I mean, there's no information out there about Manzanita lumber. You can't look it up and see how to dry it, how to work with it. It's all kind of learning as we go. And I was using Madrone kind of as my model just because they have a similar kind of trunk configuration, similar barking. And due to the weight of the Manzanita logs, I assume they had a pretty similar water content. Madrone is known for having really high saturation in the wood, water-wise. And the Manzanita, I mean, I had 5 logs this big around in the bed of my truck, and I had completely maxed out my suspension.
That's crazy.
Like you could still see the bed of my truck, and it was like a rocket ship ready to take off. So incredibly heavy wood, just high density of water. And so you kind of expect this to just dry horribly, break apart. But it dried like a dream. It stayed flat. We put it through the kiln. No breakup, no problems. It is the most well-behaved wood that I could imagine. So that was one of those rolls of the dice that.
And is your plan with it? Are you going to do stands, Jitas?
I think it's going to be an excellent stand wood. I mean, the plan with it is I'm going to work with it, and I'm being a little stingy as far as like what kind of jobs I want to apply it to. I'm doing a furniture piece will be the first thing made out of it. And I'm going to work with it as shop veneer for that piece. I don't want to build a furniture piece out of solid Manzanita because it's just going to deplenish the stock too fast, and I really want to spread it out.
And it's very rare, right? Like able to get pieces like it.
I've never seen it in my life online. I mean, the root burls people get, but I've never seen dimensional Manzanita. So for rarity, I would say it's beyond rare. It's
something that you're using rhododendron, Japanese maple, Manzanita, all these woods that excite us as bonsai people, but like, are there examples of like famous furniture makers like playing with these
different
things?
Wood,
like crazy wood, like something other than walnut or ebony or rosewood?
There's this one furniture maker, Hank Giplin, who was on the East Coast. He's probably still alive, but he's definitely late career. retired at this point of the game.
Yeah.
But he was kind of known for just kind of going pretty wild with his woods and his furniture piece. He was kind of like the Nick Lins of the furniture world, basically. Gotcha. And I had early in my furniture career had sent him some email randomly, you know, like, hey, I got this weird wood, look at this. I think it was a butterfly bush that I had milled.
Okay.
And he shot me back like, oh, you should try barberry. It's neon yellow.
Yeah, it is. I've
know
burned it before.
It totally is.
It's crazy.
And I still have that email. I've saved it ever since because it was a real kind of like starstruck moment.
But basically, it's not common. Right?
It's not common.
People are just getting off the shelf easy.
It's not the most cost-effective way of going about building furniture, really. So I would say more in the exclusive furniture realm. It typically gets bypassed. What I do, I think, is kind of has the 1 foot in the practical furniture and 1 foot in the art, which allows me to kind of get a little more funky about what I do and how I approach it. Which is nice and kind of the only way I really want to work, just because that is in me and that's just kind of how I like to go about things. So I embrace the inefficiency, you know, but then I also embrace the kind of the ecology of it. I mean, using street trees is an incredibly, you know, environmentally friendly way of going about lumber production. You know, just basically recycling our artificial environment to craft our, you know, artificial home environment. It just seems to make a lot of sense, and we can leave our natural realms to just kind of be what they are. Definitely. That and living on the Pacific Northwest, we kind of have almost a monoculture out in the forest anyway. And unless you're just absolutely gaga for Doug fir, you're a little limited.
Well, it must be exciting living in a place like Portland where there's so many different types of trees.
Well, in the city, anything can grow in Portland. That's one of the beauties of the Pacific Northwest is our climate is, you know, mild enough, but then cold enough. And then, you know, it's just this perfect zone where we can grow all sorts of species, you know, across the world. And then I've expanded my search out of the Portland area. I recently found a true rosewood. That was being grown as a street tree in Arizona. And rosewood is pretty heavily restricted as far as shipping across borders.
Most people are just buying like already stuff that was imported years and years ago. Right?
I mean, I'm not 100% sure on what the legality of it all is, but I think it's pretty close, if not already to the point where you cannot import rosewood at this point in the game. Certainly certain species, the highly desired ones. So finding a rosewood that didn't have to cross any borders to get here was really neat in terms of just kind of how to operate in that wood. And then just really fascinating. I mean, you think of rosewood's a tropical wood, you don't expect to see that in the continental United States. So being able to find that kind of one little exemption to that theory is really cool. You know, it's just a big treasure hunt. So you've worked with a lot of different wood types. You're constantly kind of innovating and working with stuff that you can't find anyone else ever have done before. What are your favorite woods to work on? Like if I was gonna come to you and commission a bonsai stand, like, and I didn't want to go the super crazy, expensive rare route. Like what are like the good, like, just classics and the benefits to them? Walnut is the classic of classics.
And is like black walnut a particular type of walnut?
It is. There's multiple varieties of walnut. Black walnut is what everybody kind of thinks of when you think of walnut.
And is that because it like will finish to the dark color and you don't have to use a special technique like ebonizing or fuming to kind of get it there?
All walnuts tend to be in the browner, darker tones. The black walnut certainly is the darkest of the walnuts. And even that varies though over the continental United States. The black walnut you get off the East Coast tends to be less figure, more monochromatic in tone, just kind of a dark chocolate brown with no real variation. Whereas the walnut we get here on the West Coast is just infused with this kind of cacophony of color, figure. It's very expressive, beautiful wood. Same species.
Do you find that a lot, like trees that you source here locally, like different than like the same trees out east? Or
different regions. The region does influence the tree's wood in a lot of different ways. Like the cherry here on the West Coast is not that desirable. It can come out to be almost a greenish tone.
Interesting.
It doesn't have the rich, deep reds that you think of when you think of cherry. Like Pennsylvania cherry is kind of the top tier.
So if I was gonna commission a cherry stand, you'd source it from the East Coast.
I would. I would recommend sourcing it from the East Coast. If you really want to do something domestic, we could do that. And I have seen decent cherry come out of this part of the world. But that's more of the anomaly rather than the rule. So I'm loving this.
It's an MMA match.
I know. I'm a dog guy, so this is I'm all for this. It's kind of mayhem. But yeah, and then the walnut's the same. Like if you wanted to get walnut, I would say if we're on the West Coast, let's play this game because it's really a lot more interesting here than it is from the East. And then walnut, a lot of the East Coast walnut is kind of factory produced. And they do what they call steam kilning of the wood. Walnut has a dark heartwood, but a very light sapwood. Heartwood's where the money is. Sapwood's pretty much valueless. So they found that you can pump up the heat on the kilning process and dry the wood faster if you just inject a bunch of steam into the chamber. It kind of moistens the outside of the wood so it doesn't dry out excessively as the inside is being sucked with moisture. And it also has this other benefit is it causes the dark wood to kind of bleed into the sapwood. So you get darker sap, but you also get this kind of lifeless ghost of a heartwood too. It kind of evens the tones out. And so it's this it looks dead. I mean, it looks like a kind of a corpse where like the flesh has been kind of drained of its color and life. It's grayish almost in that kind of sense. So very not desirable, but that's most of when you go to the lumberyard and buy walnut, that's what you're buying. That's what you're getting. You know, the boutique millers, there's a few in town, they, you know, treat it better, you get better quality. But the best way to do walnut is to air dry it, and then you really get the color profusion that we see here. There's also English walnut, which again is another beautiful wood. It tends to be more, I would say, like milk chocolate in color. But if you get like the top tier stuff, I mean, every wood comes in a variety of kind of tones. You get like the figure is kind of where the money is on the woods. And so when you get English walnut with high figure, you get this kind of black, almost spider web veining through it. That's really, really cool.
Interesting.
So it almost has a teak appearance when it's just, you know, that milk chocolate. And then with the black veining through it, it can be pretty impressive stuff.
Nice.
So I like English a lot. I like to push it on people because it doesn't, you know, kind of have the recognition that the black does. And so, you know, it's just kind of, I like to try and educate, and in that education kind of lean people towards exploring something a little different, you know, a little unusual.
So what are other like good, just common woods, easy to source, good on your end to work with?
I mean, the cherry, East Coast cherry is very nice. I would say very compliant in the bonsai world. You know, it can darken in time. It's a very photosensitive wood. So light will change the color on cherry very rapidly to the point where you kind of have to be careful in the shop if you were to plane a board down and then set another board on top of it askew so a little was exposed to the light. You could come in there in a week, remove the top board, and you would have a two-tone board underneath it where the light exposed area has darkened and the other area hasn't. But that rapid darkening, you know, works well towards advancing towards something that works in bonsai. You know, mahogany is another, you know, very common, good wood for bonsai. Very nice to work, you know, very nice, soft but hard grain. That's, you know, very good on the tools. You know, if you want to get a little crazier with the rosewoods, they're really beautiful woods to work with. The East Indian is kind of your big rosewood that you're actually going to be able to source and use, which has kind of a deep purplish color to it.
Nice.
But the harder woods can be really nice because you can take bigger risks in terms of the scale of the elements. And also they kind of hold an edge better, the shape. You get a crisper kind of resolution when you're carving or adding details. They really kind of hold that very well, when some of the softer stuff can
when choosing wood, I've heard there's two things. There's obviously woods that look good and have a good end result, and then woods that are easy to work on, and they don't always tie in. Like I've heard walnut is fairly easy to work with, but like a rosewood is actually like chips a lot and is
depends. I mean, right now I'm building a stand out of ebony. And that I would say is a miserable wood to work.
Yeah.
The sawdust is basically black pepper, if you want to imagine it that way. So just a heavy, heavy irritant for both the nose, the eyes. But yeah, so you know the ebony is just like, I mean, today even as I was working it, you know, I had eye protection on, mask on, everything, and still it was, my eyes were watering. And there's just only so much of it I can take before I kind of got to put it up for the day and move on. And it's also very hard. Like, I mean, rosewood's hard, but ebony is a tier above, to the point where cutting edges deflect. You know, so rather than cutting, it tends to push it up because it's too hard to actually cut. So I have to, you know, before I'll start something like that, I would have to go through the shop and change every blade to just a brand new fresh blade. Even then it'll be hard, but at least there's a hope. If it's even slightly dull, I mean, you're going to run it over a blade and it's just going to pop up and it won't even cut it. And, you know, the harder stuff does kind of make it a little more hairy in the woodworking. If you're doing router table work, it's not going to cut it nicely. It can tend to grab at times. So, you know, certainly the ebonies, while they're beautiful in a bonsai application, very dark, almost black woods, they're a pain to work. And then, you know, all woods have different kind of allergy toxicities in them. And everybody's got different sensitivities, kind of depending on who you are, where you are, and you know how you're built. Some people are highly allergic to walnut, which as a furniture maker is kind of the kiss of death, because you're going to be doing a lot of walnut. But some people, even if they get near it, they'll break out in hives all over. They can't get anywhere near the stuff without being fully suited up. For me, it seems anything that comes out of Brazil tends to be a problem. Somebody brought me once some old shipping pallets that they had got. That's this Peroba Rosa is the wood, and it's a pretty enough wood out of Brazil. But it turned out I was highly allergic to it, to the point where if there was sawdust left over from the day before and I came back into the shop, I would, you know, get not only just allergies, but again, break out in hives. It would really affect me. I ended up closing out the job and just kind of giving the client back all the lumber, and I was like, you know, I really appreciate it, but I just I can't have this stuff around. I can't deal with it. So yeah, those are, you know, certain things to avoid. But you know, being a gun for hire, I kind of, you know.
Do you find that clients, especially for bonsai stands, do they come to you with an idea what they want with the wood source, or is that something that they collaborate with you on? Or
a lot of times it's a collaboration. Sometimes people have an idea of what they want. They have a wood that they want. They have a vision, and it depends. And it's not always a difference between hobbyist and professional. I mean, a lot of the professionals have a very clear vision of how they want that display to be and to look. And that tends to be more on the artistic side than I'd say the wooden side. You know, a lot of them defer to kind of my experience in terms of selecting woods that would work well in a composition. Same that, you know, a lot of people defer to the bonsai professional about, you know, those kind of issues. But, you know, I had one client, he is wanting me to make a stand out of some Brazilian rosewood that he has. And that's, I mean, in terms of rosewood, that's
one of the good ones, right?
That's the king. I mean, that stuff, I mean, it's to the point now that if you go in the woods and find a Brazilian rosewood stump, you can't mill that stump unless you have documented paperwork saying that that tree was cut down prior to 1970.
That's crazy.
It's that heavily restricted.
Wow.
This stand, when it's done, if he takes it across a border, it'll be confiscated. Even with paperwork proving that it's legitimate. I mean, it is.
So it's a U.S. only.
Yes, this is a U.S. only stand. It will never cross an international border. The wood is heavily restricted. You know, you are not allowed to transport, cut.
Yeah.
The wood has been heavily milled in the past. I mean, Brazilian rosewood has been a popular wood since,
Yeah.
pre-Thomas Jefferson days. I mean, the colonial period, it was
Yeah, yeah.
scarce. But it's a beautiful wood, and it smells beautiful.
Yeah.
The name rosewood is inspired by the smell of the wood when you cut it. It kind of
Interesting.
smells like roses
Interesting.
when you cut it.
I didn't know that.
But it's a stunning wood.
Yeah.
And I was very excited to have the opportunity to work it because it's just not something that happens every day. I mean, finding a board of Brazilian rosewood is hard enough. You know, convincing somebody to build something out of it is just a whole other tier.
So talking about building, with your stand business, are you mostly building exclusively on commissions, or do you ever pre-build stands and show them? I know you just got back from the National. We were both there, and one of my clients actually picked up a stand from you to use on the show. But what is your percentage of you make a stand because you just want to make it versus you're making it with a specific kind of client in mind?
I would say the majority is commission work.
Okay.
I do spec stands. But display is such a specific, I mean, it's like buying a suit, and so in order to have the variety to match every person's nuance of display, I mean, it's not only height, width, depth, it's color, it's ornamentation. I mean, the permutations are almost endless is what the stand is. So by and large, I'm working with clients either design a stand for a tree in their collection or design a stand that fits a breadth of trees in their collection.
Yeah.
And so that's where generally most of the work comes out of. I do build spec stands, and it's kind of fun because I can kind of let my hair down a little more. Those tend to be the more experimental.
Okay.
And sometimes they find their owners, it may take a bit sometimes.
Yeah.
But that's where I can really kind of start to push the boundaries of what's acceptable in bonsai and bonsai display.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to me. I'm very, respectful of the Japanese tradition, and I think it's important to understand that before you start trying to step out of it, because you need to kind of understand the language before you can kind of build on it.
Yeah.
But to me, it's like that separates art from craft. If you're just replaying the rules, you're kind of in this craft zone.
Yeah.
But if you're kind of building on those rules and kind of taking it in new experimental directions, that's when it becomes art and it really sings.
Yeah.
And I think that is acceptable. I mean, the Japanese built on penjing, and God only knows where it started.
Yeah.
But every culture has kind of taken bonsai and made it their own. I mean, it's kind of baked into the art form because you tend to need to use your native tree species, which will dictate a little bit of what your trees are going to look like.
Yeah.
And how it's going to be, how the art's going to be.
Yeah. Yeah, something I've always really respected about your work is you can make this stand that's, the exact replica of something in a Kokofu book, and you can make something that is so avant-garde it doesn't look like a stand at all. But a lot of your work that I've encountered and experienced is like traditional stands with a touch of something new to it. It's not too far removed from.
It's just kind of reinterpreting those forms in a slightly different way. I mean, just saying, it's these little details here where it's just taking the conventional form, being like, okay, well, that's an interesting thing, but what else can we do with this? Can we simplify an element? Can we shift an element? I mean, just simply by reducing the dimension of this kind of return member, instead of having the same thickness kind of mitered again in return, it pushes this kind of bottom piece just inside of just 1/4 of an inch, but it kind of gives a dimension to the stand. Instead of having it all kind of this two-dimensional front, it kind of makes it a little more sculptural in its appearance, which is just kind of this interesting shift.
Yeah, it's neat. It's like if you look from far away and squint your eyes, it looks like a very traditional stand, and when you start to really embrace the details, you notice it's an evolved version of that. Now does the same thing with his pottery work.
Bonsai is such a subtle art form. It doesn't always reward the kind of crazy, I really like rebended the wheel here. Those little subtle nuances are really great because it's kind of like, you can take it in and enjoy it, but then when you start to go up and appreciate the nuance, the branching and everything, you realize, there's things happening down here too that are worth exploring. And I think that's the biggest thing for me is just getting people to take in the full composition. You know, like I hate the Kokofu images that cut off the stands right here.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen so many of those. Yeah. And it's just frustrating on a stand designer perspective because I'm trying to look at these images for inspiration and I'm deriving inspiration from the top.
It's funny you bring up Kokofu too, because the Kokofu books actually are not necessarily the correct stands that they use in the exhibit. When they photograph the book, they photograph it weeks prior during the jury process.
Okay,
and so like if I'm a bonsai, and everything has to go through a bonsai professional. So if I'm a bonsai professional, I'm bringing 12 client trees in for the selection process. And let's say they're all maples and pines. I'm just going to bring 1 or 2 stands that works for maple and pine and just photograph them all on that rather than load up and pack 12 individual stands. So a lot of the photos that you see in the actual albums, unless it's a prize-winning tree which was shot at the exhibit, they're actually like
just kind of placeholders.
They're kind of placeholders.
Yes.
And you'll see like, and oftentimes in an actual Kokofu book, if you study the stands, you can be like, this stand's in here like 6 times.
Yeah.
Like the same exact stand.
I know, you see a lot of it. And I think that's just kind of a cultural perspective on the stand. I mean, it goes back to the stand being a frame. It's not that important.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, it's holding the tree up. Does it suit the tree's character? You know, is the color right? Is the size right? Check. All right, we're done.
Yeah.
And then like, you know, I was saying, trying to take the stand and kind of integrate it into the story of that tree a little bit more.
Yeah.
A lot of what I'll do too is just kind of reinterpreting traditional carving forms with live edge and kind of more natural wood forms, just as kind of substitutes. Like on that stand of Howard's,
the Japanese maple stand.
The Japanese maple stand.
I think it's an ebony base, right? And then
it's an ebony stand with the maple in this kind of center, kind of underside area here. But I picked a part of the trunk that kind of had a gentle kind of curve to it. You know, and a lot of bonsai pots and bonsai stands have that kind of slight curve underneath them that kind of give them that visual lift and lightness. And so just kind of using the actual tree to kind of replicate that form. Yeah. You know, in furniture, I did a liquor cabinet piece that was kind of inspired by the carved cartouches you get on kind of colonial highboys.
Yeah, I think I've seen a photo of
But it was this root burl that had this just wild kind of root extension to it. And so I kind of put that on the top to kind of mimic that form, but do it in a found kind of way. Yeah. Which is really kind of, you know, on a personal level, like the whole Yamadori, you know, bonsai collecting thing, and the Suiseki. All of that kind of is what's really captivating me is that kind of that found form and collaborating with the found object. It's kind of answered half your problems and also presented problems. And it's like, well, how do I take this form and give it its due, you know, but make it work in this kind of bigger picture? Which is a really fun challenge to kind of prompt the work with. I mean, it's kind of like when you get a tree, you have the trunk, and that is set for the by and large. And then how do I form this into something that, you know, really speaks to that trunk that exists and you know, but still works and feels natural and feels connected to the tree.
It's neat. I know you make a lot of stands for crazy Conifer Yamadori, and a lot of those trees have so much personality that a lot of that live edge kind of matches that craziness that the tree exudes. With deciduous trees, like when you made the stand for Howard, you used a much more subtle kind of expression of the live edge. Do you find it either more difficult or more easy to build a stand for a deciduous tree when it has more kind of quiet, kind of less crazy kind of
the
features?
Yamadori, the Conifer, the Yamadori world, I can get wilder on design than I generally can get on a deciduous. But I feel like in the deciduous realm, you have more opportunity for color. I feel like the deciduous, they present more color. You have your fall color, you have your bark color, you have your flower color. So there's more opportunity for experimentation with color in a deciduous stand than in a Yamadori pine, which tends to be, just give me the darkest thing I can put this on. You know, so a lot of that's walnut, or we're darkening some other wood. You know, and I've tried to introduce as many options into that package as possible for the Yamadori kind of stuff. But it's a more limited palette.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of the deciduous, you know, especially kind of the more kind of what I would call the meadow deciduous, where it's a very balanced, you know, basically the tree
Nice
that's
full
got
mature
everything
tree,
it wants.
yeah.
Yeah, full mature tree, perfect environment, full sun, full energy, you know, it's not starved, it's not beaten, it's just, it's blossoming and being what it can be.
Yeah.
But they kind of require a more balanced platform to put them on. The tension, the imbalance is not what this
stand with a lot of
composition's
asymmetry
about.
wouldn't.
Yeah, they're not. I mean, there's either, you know, you have your kind of your balance or you have your movement.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of the Amadori is speaking to the movement, the asymmetry, the imbalance.
Yeah.
You know, that whole life on a mountain, it could collapse, it could fall.
Yeah.
You know, this thing is, you know, on the edge of survival.
Yeah.
Whereas the deciduous is kind of more about that balance and just kind of about that growth and also that peace and tranquility that you find in a more, you know, gentle environment. So yeah, you don't quite get to let your hair down and get as crazy with things, but then being able to choose a wider color palette, I think, is advantageous in its own right.
Yeah.
And really scratches the diverse wood option list that I get into. So, you know, like that Manzanita, that deep red.
That would look great for a flowering fruiting tree.
I think that's got, you know, deciduous written all over it. Also, being as dense and hard as it is, I can probably take it down to very small sizes.
Interesting. So you can get more kind of delicate,
more
subtle,
delicate forms out of it, which would be advantageous, I think, in a deciduous setting.
Yeah.
A lot of that Yamadori stuff is 250 pounds of tree.
It's not just for visual weight, but you need stuff.
Yeah,
for
there's
just,
the structure
like,
and
tangible
visual to that, so you're competing at that level.
Yeah.
So a lot more delicate on the deciduous front, which requires, you know, just delicate forms.
Something I really like is that you kind of, you still innovate just in those subtle ways, like we talked about with this inner leg on the stand under the maple here. You did a stand for an anonymous client at the Pacific Bonsai Expo. It was one that we actually talked about or fantasized about one time, and I was happy to see you realize it. It's your classic deciduous stand with dowels, but you did it kind of more of a gradient. So they started close together, and then like kind of the spaces got bigger and bigger. So it wasn't just kind of perfectly spaced on your classic deciduous form.
I was trying to create this kind of visual trick of the eye, basically, where we create, you know, what almost appears to be a rounded form. Just kind of how you would do crosshatch and shading and drawing. But try and translate that into the bonsai realm, so you have this kind of almost tension between this rectangular, two-dimensional thing that feels like it's giving or billowing, or there's an internal kind of growth to it in a way that it feels like it's breaking that rectangular form.
It's really cool. I thought that was a cool
fun little
effect.
thing to do.
Yeah, for those of you looking, I'll see if I can find a photo for the B-roll, but it was a ginkgo that was displayed by an anonymous exhibitor.
I think we oxidized, it was a black stand, I believe.
I think it was first Expo.
I think it was oxidized walnut, if I'm remembering correctly.
It was super cool.
Walnut's one of those ones that when you oxidize it, it goes jet black.
Okay.
Which would be good for especially trees that tend to have yellow foliage, the yellow and the black. I mean,
they can play off
with the
each
Howard
other.
stand. That was part of the inspiration on the ebony,
neat.
was to get that black to really give the yellow a pop. But similar there, kind of playing towards the fall foliage of the ginkgo to really kind of give it an electric highlight. But yeah, that's those kind of things that, you know, push and pull. And I think the aspect of bonsai that's always really fascinated me is it's a sculptural art form. These trees are three-dimensional. But in the display world, it's very much conceived of as a two-dimensional art form. You know, with the front of the tree, I mean, they're all conceived of from these single vantage points, two-dimensional image. And that tension between the three-dimensional realm and this two-dimensional realm.
It's tough. I deal with that all the time. There's so many times you style a tree if you're doing it with wires or shaping it or pruning it, and you like it looks good in 3D, and then you like go to like look at it from the front, and you're like, oh man, I gotta make a bunch of tweaks. It's going between 2D and 3D is
it's a
one
tough
of the
world.
challenges.
I think for me it presents more opportunity than challenge, because it's kind of, I can play with that dynamic.
Yeah.
You know, I can make things kind of like with those dowels where it's like, is it 2D? Is it 3D?
Yeah,
is it like, how
it
is
almost
this
probably
existing?
looked like round based on
That
how
was,
you
yeah,
were,
the idea was kind of like to confuse, like, what form is this even?
Yeah,
you know?
it's funny because it was so subtle that I'm sure most people who walk by didn't even really notice it. But I love that just like that little tiny detail was there for someone to discover if they look.
I mean, a lot of times I think that's what really fascinates. Is like, and that's what I really love about bonsai and bonsai display. It's a very subtle art form. It's not a preachy art form. It's not trying to convert anybody. It's something for every person to kind of come into on their own and take what they want from it. And I think that's the beauty of it. I think art that gets too heavy-handed, that's kind of driving home this message, it loses me. It's kind of like, I want to have my kind of way of walking into it and coming away. And if I can guide someone to a place subtly where they don't even realize that they've gone there, then that's nice and great. But just to be able to let every person kind of have their own adventure in it. I mean, just like walking in the woods. It's like, you know, you can walk on a trail and have this kind of curated experience, or you can kind of go through on your own and follow what interests you. And that cliff over there looks cool. I want to go see where that takes me. And I think that exploration is where the real adventure and fun is.
No, that's super cool.
And that's the beauty, is like coming onto something that maybe it's just you that has noticed. Like you're in your own little meadow at this point.
How do you balance like the artistry of the work that you do versus, you know, just kind of making something for a brief?
I mean, it depends on the client. It depends on the tree and the composition. You kind of have to kind of test the waters a little bit. I mean, a lot of the people I work with on a repeating basis, so I know their aesthetics. I know their values. I know what they like. I know what they don't like. And that makes it really easy because I can kind of know where I can push and pull. But even in that case, it's kind of, you know, like if I know I've got a client who is a little forgiving in terms of what the product might be, I might try and interject some of my own personal aesthetic into that. And sometimes it really bites me in the ass. You know, one clear example, it was a furniture piece. But, you know, sometimes, you know, you get wood, and when you're using wood like I do, you know, really focusing on the natural forms, it's not always the best piece of wood for woodworking. It tends to have cracks and defects that create a challenging piece to work. And a lot of times I'll use epoxy to kind of basically make a piece of wood that can't hold itself together usable. And there was this one client, we were doing a maple piece, and I dyed the epoxy to keep it subtle because I don't want the turquoise thing, but it ended up being pink. And boy, did they not like pink. And it really was a challenge. I had to recolor the epoxy, which is not something that's easy to do.
I'm sure that's tough.
And so that didn't work out well. But also, I just finished a root stand, which was my first root stand.
Like a carved root stand?
Like a carved, honest-to-God root stand.
I can't wait to see that.
I'm actually really happy. It was kind of like a client approached me and was like, have you ever done a root stand before? And I was like, no.
I mean, that's a very different process than the joinery that you're...
And I had no prior experience doing it. I had no kind of clue how it was going to come out. And I was like, look, I'm looking for someone, like I'm interested in this form. I think root stands are beautiful. I really enjoy them.
They're also almost impossible to find.
Are they really?
I went to Japan this year. I went to 30 different gardens, actively looking to buy some root stands for Shohin, and I found them in several gardens, but everyone's like, we can't sell them. The guy who made these passed away. Like, we can't get them anymore. I ended up finding a couple, but it was after a lot of searching.
Well, shameless plug. This one really inspired me, and I've got the wood queued up for a few more. So I'm going to do some Spec root stands unless someone calls me up tomorrow and wants them made their own way.
Are you doing more Shohin size, bigger tree size?
These are bigger tree size. Not opposed to the Shohin, but the piece I was making it for was 10-inch diameter on the top, so not large scale, but bigger. I think it stands about 15 inches tall. Walnut that I carved. But I've done these freeform pieces in the past where bonsai enthusiast, you go out in the woods to collect Yamadori.
Yeah.
And maybe you do collect Yamadori that day, but you also find some really nice dead wood in the
Yeah.
process. I think every bonsai enthusiast who hikes has a collection.
I brought one home yesterday.
Exactly, natural shit that they find. And so I've had a couple clients approach me with these really neat pieces of dead wood that they've collected, and they're like, we want to make something out of it.
Yeah.
I don't know what, just let's turn this into something. I did one that was a coat rack, and I did another that was kind of like a side table with a light.
Okay.
And they're really fun pieces to do because it's just really let your hair down.
Yeah.
All traditional joinery rules are out the window. You're working with just really organic forms. And one of the solutions I found to making them work is kind of turning these very refined dowels, like kind of almost shaker quality kind of turned dowels, and just using them as props to kind of hold the piece up in the right way.
Yeah.
Kind of like you would have like an old oak tree with these meandering branches that can't support itself, and you're propping them up as it goes, kind of thinking of it that way. And so I kind of applied that to the root stand, where it's kind of this very natural organic thing, but then it has these kind of man-made, you know, and the contrast was, I think, important for me on that. So they're very finished and very man-made, but then they still kind of echo the form of the root and the meandering, and they're put in kind of an organic way. So you're getting this tension between the root natural in that case, and then this kind of man-made additional element. And that one for the client, it was kind of like the piece that we had of wood to work with. I was like, well, this isn't going to stand itself up. We're going to have to prop it. And so it's kind of like, well, I'll give you the traditional view. I'll give you one view that you can't see my weird shit.
Yeah.
And then we're going to have to do something because this is going to knock your tree over, and I can't have that happen. That doesn't work business-wise if you break people's trees with your stands. And so I did the prop thing, and I sent them the picture once it was done. I was like, look, here you got your traditional view. All's well and good, but I was like, I really encourage you to think about this other view, this other way of displaying this traditional form in a kind of a new light, where it's this kind of collaboration where kind of like nature has reached this age where it can't sustain itself anymore and has been kind of propped up and extended in a reverent kind of way. Is kind of what I would hope people would take from it. And so I want to try and do a few more that don't have a client attached, where I can really push that dynamic.
Well, maybe we'll see some at the
level.
Pacific Bonsai Expo.
Maybe. We'll see. What is going to be seen at that show is not totally up to me, but I think there may be at least one entry that tries.
Nice.
We'll see which view he chooses.
Maybe on your vendor table too.
Yeah, maybe on the vendor as well. We'll see. But yeah, I'm really excited about them. They ended up being a lot more fun to do than I was anticipating. I was afraid that it was going to be kind of a laborious, Herculean disaster. But it kind of went pretty fun, and it was great. So
super fun. Well, to wrap up, I personally have several of your stands, both ones that we've commissioned, ones that I did in a stand class, which I don't know if you're still doing those.
I am. I don't have any currently scheduled. I was planning on, this is probably not going to air in any kind of like timeline, but I am thinking of going by the BSOP and talking to people there about setting up some classes
I highly
for early next year.
I highly recommend your classes. I knew nothing about woodworking going in, and I have a really beautiful stand after 3 days to show for it. It was super fun to just like see the process, like kind of learn what I don't know, and just kind of piece together a stand that way. That was super fun. But working with you on commission has been super fun. Buying stands and Jitas from you has been great. So I always get a lot of joy going to like the U.S. National Show or Pacific Bonsai Expo and seeing your stands kind of utilized in displays.
It's always great to see them too, because when working with clients, we're talking a lot about this, but oftentimes I ship the stand out.
And then that's like the last you see of it for a while.
Yeah, that's the last I see her here. And then to see it at the show is almost the first time I'm seeing the two together.
That's super cool.
And really judging whether or not I achieved what I was going for, in the display. It's always a joy going to shows and then seeing other people's displays too. I mean, it's just, it's always great.
Where can people find you if they want to reach out?
If they want to reach out, I have the website, austinheitzmanfurniture.com. I'm also Austin Heitzman Furniture on Instagram. Both avenues are great. for keeping in touch. You can sign up for my mailing list through the website or follow me on social media. If you're interested in classes, I recommend you follow me in at least one of those two arenas because I'll be announcing them via those two mediums at some point here, probably sooner than later. But yeah, either one of those is a great way of getting in touch and just kind of seeing what I'm doing. On the social media, I do pretty regular stories as far as just day-to-day woodshop stuff. I was posting a little bit of that ebony and rosewood stand today.
Okay.
I was doing some pretty technical stuff that worked out. So I was very happy to show that.
Yeah.
But yeah, so those are both great ways of kind of tracking and seeing what's going on.
Yeah, if you need a stand, I highly recommend you talk to Austin. He does some of the most beautiful work in the country here. So
don't take my word for it.
No, you can take mine. Well, thanks for tuning in. You've been watching RAKUYO's Deciduous Bonsai podcast. I'm your host, Andrew Robson, and thank you to Austin for coming out and
thanks
chatting
for having me.
Awesome.
And thanks for these two for being so cooperative.
They were a little cooperative, mostly cooperative, but thanks for putting up with the dogs.
Hopefully entertaining.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you next time.